Hello, Wanderers. Welcome back to our Crusader Kings 3 roleplay series following Ivar the Elder, the King of Eystrasaltsriki, and, well, a few other places now. As you can see, our realm here on the map, the entirety of it, stretching from Gotland to Hjaltmar and down to Aquitaine, which, as you can see, looks a little bit different than it did in the last episode. And I will explain some of the changes that I made from that last episode, which you can see now. It has been about a year since the end of the war, and things have changed not only in our kingdom but around the world. But first, I'll explain some of the changes I made, and the most notable of those being that we have much less lands here in Aquitaine than we did before, which originally the conquest allowed us to take all of Aquitaine. However, I felt like that was a little bit unrealistic and a little unlikely. Just considering the way that the war went, we did spend a lot of time conquering Frisia here, but we didn't have as much time to take Aquitaine. However, considering how badly beaten the Holy Roman Empire was, once we took Bordeaux, I think that would give us pretty strong access down the river here. And so I've basically confined our conquests in Aquitaine to the region around the Garonne and to the south here. So we didn't even make it to the Mediterranean. Basically, as far as our ships could go, that was basically where we could. So we probably came in, took Bordeaux, made our way down the river, took as many places as we could along the river, which cut off these southern counties here, and then we were able to take those. But I'm sure the Holy Romans would have tried to fortify the border here as much as possible and prevent any further north conquests. So to me, this feels a lot more reasonable and a lot more fitting that these were the lands that we were able to conquer here in Aquitaine. Then, of course, we've got Frisia as well, and yeah, that's that from the war. Now, as you can see, considering how badly beaten the Holy Roman Empire was, the authority of the emperor was seriously put into question, and that has allowed some of the more powerful vassals of the kingdom to declare essential independence. And what I mean by essential independence is not necessarily that they are completely independent, but for all intents and purposes, they are. So, to explain that, we can see we've got Brittany here, Burgundy, Bavaria, and Corsica. Basically the main kingdoms here have all broken away from the Holy Roman Empire. But like I said, it's just they're practically speaking independent, but in name they are still essentially de jure lands of the Holy Roman Empire. And even more interesting, as you can see, if we take a look at the Holy Roman Empire, you can see that even though they are independent, Brittany and Burgundy are still electors here. So the King of Burgundy is still an elector. The King of Brittany is still an elector as well. So they still have their position within the empire, but the emperor just doesn't have any authority to make them do anything, essentially. They don't have any need to contribute troops to it. In fact, in this case, Brittany is actually kind of fighting against the emperor because they've got an alliance with England, and England is trying to take back some of their territories on the island. So Brittany is actively acting against the emperor here, and Burgundy is just like, well, you can't tell us what to do because we are far more powerful than you right now. And so, however, a lot of the smaller rulers, especially here in France, stick with the emperor because they need that protection. Even though the emperor has proven that he can't protect them, they're still better off within the empire than on their own, is probably what a lot of these, dukes and counts in France are thinking right now. But one thing you'll notice, actually, if we switch characters here and we just briefly switch over to the Holy Roman Empire, you'll see that the emperor's authority is their autonomous vassals. So the emperor has practically no authority left over his vassals. And so yeah, they're independent, but they're still kind of under the banner of the Holy Roman Empire. And then Burgundy, Brittany, Bavaria, all these other ones are just even like a step further than that in terms of their level of independence. So it's not like our victory just destroyed the Holy Roman Empire. It just weakened the authority of the emperor to a point where he is the emperor in name only, essentially, and all of his vassals are practically speaking independent for all intents and purposes. So I think that is a pretty reasonable outcome. Now, will the empire continue to buckle under this pressure? That remains to be seen. I suspect that they might over time, but we shall certainly see how that all plays out. Now, I did mention in the last episode that this would be something of an epilogue episode, and that's because this series, the one that began with Ivar Twistfoot oh so long ago, I believe he died almost 60 years ago if we go back to our great grandfather Jarl Ivar. He died in the year, what was it, 928, so that's 61 years ago that he died. And this campaign has been going on for what now? Probably, well over 100 years now, since Ivar was a young man. And this is, this is the story of the last Viking. And although it might have seemed at the beginning like King Yorleif might have been the last Viking in many respects, and for, in the sense of the grander story that we've been building here, I do think that King Ivar is the last true Viking king that this world may see for some time. Not to say that he will be the last, a Asatru king by any means, but if we take a look at the religion map, just take a look at this. In Scandinavia, Catholicism is spreading significantly. It's taken over almost all of Sweden. It's even taken over parts of Norway, Denmark. All of England has been converted back to Catholicism. Really, the only holdouts, just a tiny bit here in Iberia, and then, within our own lands as well, and then a little bit in Norway. But Catholicism, despite our best efforts, is spreading in the heartland of Scandinavia, where our religion comes from. And if we take a look, even King Halfdan, our cousin here, who was a Satru before, has converted to Catholicism as well, the King of Norway and Sweden. We helped him out when he was still a Satru to take Sweden, but then he just converts to Catholicism. Like, this is a tide that we have been fighting against, that, we have been trying to hold off as much as we can. We've been a bastion of the Norse ways, of the Asatru ways. But this isn't a war that I think that we can win in the long term. And I think that we may stave off the fall of the Asatru faith for longer than it did historically. Obviously, people will continue to worship for, 100 years or 200 years or possibly more. But it will fade out. And what I mean by the last Viking, the last great Viking king, is that as the Norse faith begins to kind of fade out, that, there are less and less followers holding true to those Viking ways. And although we were able to amass this army of thousands of Norse warriors to lay siege to the Holy Roman Empire, will that be the case a generation from now, in our son's generation? Will they be able to amass an army of 10,000 Norse warriors when many of those warriors are going to be converting to Catholicism and following the new ways, there's going to be less and less men going a Viking. And as there becomes less and less men holding to that, going on these raids, going on these great Viking adventurers, they're going to end up fighting stronger and stronger defenses of these places. England and the Holy Roman Empire and all these places are going to be continuing to build up their defenses, build up their technology, build up their manpower, and things like that. And so, as we have less and less Viking warriors, they're having stronger and stronger defenses. And so the idea that somebody in the next generation could pull off what Ivar just pulled off is becoming less and less likely as the world continues to change around them. So it's not that Ivar is literally the last Viking. There will probably be Vikings for another 50 years, maybe 100 years, but he's the last one that could pull off anything of this scale. And it's entirely possible that his children might also convert to Catholicism one day as well. So we have staved it off, the fading of our faith and the fading of our way of life longer than it did historically. Historically speaking, around this time period that we're in now was when, we started to see a lot of Catholicism spreading in these lands. I think Denmark had the king of Denmark, Harald Bluetooth, had converted. I can't remember, but I think it was before this time period. And then Norway and Sweden were converting as well. And by the year 1066, there weren't really, a Satru followers in the same numbers that there would be, during this time period. And so, the Viking Age historically was ending during this time period. I think it will last a little bit longer in our playthrough, maybe another 50 years longer than it did historically. But inevitably, I think that we will continue to, our ways will continue to fade. And something tells me that maybe Iberia might be one of the last places holding to those old ways, like this little pocket of Norse faith here in Iberia. I don't know. I could see that happening. But yeah, that's what I mean by the last Viking. Not that we are literally the last Viking, but just that we are the last Viking who's going to be able to accomplish this, something as great as what we did here. Which I think is both sad but also fascinating. It's a twist on how things happened historically, and it gives us a little bit of insight into how things, might have happened historically, and that kind of, it didn't go out all in one day, but a slow fading as Catholicism started to spread into those lands and the rulers converted because it was politically convenient. And as the rulers converted, the people would slowly start, they would accept missionaries in, the people would slowly start to convert as well. There were less and less people to go on these great Viking adventurers. And eventually those old ways just faded off. That's how it happened historically. And that's how I imagine that it's going to happen in this playthrough as well. So yeah. And in that sense, this story that started with our great grandfather, Ivar Twistfoot, is in some ways coming to an end here. In the sense that, this was a story of this Norse family, this Norse, these people. And even though he became Mos-Arabic and, his own story was quite different, but, Vemender holding true to those old ways, our father holding true to those old ways. I think it's that this chapter of the story, this kind of third chapter of the saga of the Skald, which we do hold in our possession, is kind of coming to an end. But that doesn't mean that this series is going to be coming to an end, or this story, the greater story of the world. this will be continuing on into a new series that'll probably take place maybe 100 years from now. Possibly we might start in the year 1066, um, like in the playthrough date, and see what happens. Um, but I'll get a little bit more into that towards the end of the episode, because I do want to show you what scenario we've set up here. In the meantime, I know I was just talking, and this episode's going to be a lot of talking, but you're 8 episodes in, you guys already know what you're in for. So I had some questions at the end of the last episode, particularly revolving around how would we manage such a far spread out land that has as the one that we now rule over. We've got land from here, Gotland in the Baltic, down to Aquitaine and Hjalmar. How could we possibly manage that? Well, the first thing you'll notice is that our capital is now in Bordeaux. And that is because this is the region that we need to have the majority of our focus on in order to hold it. So Ivar is positioning himself in Bordeaux in order to maintain his control and authority over Aquitaine personally, and that is going to be important for ruling these lands here. He can't really do it from afar. We positioned some of our trusted people in some of these lands. We've got Count Olaf Scales here, ruling some lands. We've got Count Kettle Soup is ruling some of these lands as well. I believe we've got a Snarfari here in Aunis. We've got Count Arnbjorn of Orkneyar here in Aegon. I believe he's married to the daughter of Geralf. Yeah, he is. And Njord Emenderson, the grandson of Njord Ravensblood, is ruling some of these lands as well. So we've got some of our Viking lords positioned here. We do have some Basque and French lords or Occitanian lords here as well. So there is kind of a mix here. Some of these lords have submitted. Obviously, they're not too happy with the prospect here. So we will probably be facing some rebellion, but for now they've bent the knee, and that's what's important. So obviously you can imagine that we are, controlling Aquitaine directly, which, is probably fairly easy for a king. Well, not easy, but, this is a doable thing for Ivar, who's incredibly powerful. He's a strong, capable warrior. He is very diplomatic as well. So if he's managing these lands directly, he can obviously hold it. What about his lands further off? How does he hold Frisia? Well, Frisia is not being held by him directly, but it's actually being held by his powerful and loyal vassals, Duke Frostir, the son of Thunder, who now holds the Jarldom of Holland, and Duke Saemon the Shield, who holds the Jarldom of Utrecht. We've also got a Snarfari here as well, Zentulo Snarfari. And these two loyal vassals of ours are the ones who are holding Frisia in our name. So we're not holding it directly, and we probably have very little direct control over our vassals here. They are just, essentially sworn to us as their king, but they're basically, functioning as autonomous warlords here. We do hold some lands directly ourselves, Dokkum and Luvarden, but those lands are, these are just lands that, it's not like we're managing them directly, right? Like, this is just, we probably have like people here and warriors here holding these castles. But yeah, that's about as far as that goes. So this is all being managed by some of our most loyal and trusted warriors, and they're going to be the ones holding Frisia. The lands further afield, Hjaltland, we don't really need to be concerned about that. Our brother's holding that, so he can just rule as he has been. Same with Sieland. That's ruled by Chiefess Katrine Halfdan's daughter. totally, she can just continue on as she has. And then Gotland, well, this island is our firmest possession. The fact that we might be gone for 5 years or 10 years doesn't really matter. It's not like there's going to be a rebellion on the island of Gotland against Ivar, just because he's gone for a couple of years. And it's entirely possible that we left our wife in charge of the island anyways. So there's really nothing to worry about in terms of this. And there's really not anything that we have to directly manage for things to continue on here. Osel is ruled by our chieftain, and he can rule just as exactly as he is. So it's not like we have this direct authority over all of these lands. They're all kind of being held by people who are sworn to us, and they're presumably just too afraid or have no reason to try to break free because there's, they get to rule just as they always have. So for those questioning how we could manage an empire like this, well, it's essentially ruled by semi-autonomous vassals who are just sworn to us and have no reason not to be sworn to us. They're better off, being sworn to this powerful king, and until they see a reason why they should strike out against us, there's not much reason for them to upset the status quo. So that's the way that I see the current situation. To reflect that, I've actually lowered our tribal authority to limited tribal authority, where we were at high tribal authority, but I've actually lowered it to reflect the fact that we do have this pretty decentralized realm. They're not fully autonomous, but they are, fairly autonomous in the way that this realm operates now. It's just a bunch of warlords who, swear their allegiance to King Ivar. Pretty straightforward, I would say. So yeah, that's the situation with the realm. In terms of how things are looking, I mean, our son Yorleif here will eventually inherit the kingdom of the Baltic. Our son Vemender is set to inherit the kingdom of Frisia, and our son Karl is set to inherit the kingdom of Aquitaine. I've also noticed for some reason that Balder is set to inherit the kingdom of Estonia and Gotland. So, yeah, well, I mean, it's a little bit confusing. I'll probably need to adjust I think it's because we've made our capital here in Bordeaux. But I'll probably adjust that at some point before we die. I'll switch my capital back to Gotland just because I want our eldest son to inherit the Baltic, and I want second son to inherit Frisia, third son to inherit Aquitaine. Our fourth son somehow says he's going to inherit Estonia, but we don't even hold that kingdom title. It doesn't even exist. So yeah, not too sure about that one. Regardless, that's the current situation. Some people have asked if we, suggested that we could make an empire, which I believe is technically actually not possible regardless. So yeah, we won't be forming an empire. I wouldn't form an empire anyways. I think that Ivar expects that his sons shall each rule their lands as independent kings, and he has no desire to keep this realm as one solidified, unified realm. It's not made in such a way that it should be kept as one unified realm here. These realms are very disparate. As literally like you guys are saying in the comments, this is a very spread out realm. And although Ivar can keep it together, I think he understands that it does not need to be kept together after his death, and he just wants his sons to rule their own kingdoms and be strong and good kings. So we're not going to be forming a kingdom, no desire, or forming an empire, and I have no desire to form an empire. Now we will get time rolling here. I do want to let a little bit of time pass here. You can see that our court grandeur has gone up. Now, we do want to pick a dynasty legacy. And I was looking at some of the different options here. Legitimacy, strange gods, pillage. I don't think we're going to go with pillage because I suspect that there's not going to be a lot of necessarily raiding going on in the next couple generations. Customs and activities, warfare. There's actually some interesting options here. The one that I'm actually leaning towards is the strange gods one. And I think that's simply because it fits with our characters. We've had a lot of adventurers in our family, and more so than just having adventurer type characters, landless characters as opposed to landed ones. All of our characters have been adventurers. Even the landed ones have gone on adventures, Viking raids and Viking adventures. And so I think, Strange Gods for the Scalendil dynasty, which we are still a part of, makes the most sense because, we have encountered all these different gods and, we've got most Arabics in the family. We've probably got Catholics in the family at this point too. So I think that this one makes the most sense. So that's the one that we're gonna go with here. The powerful boar of Saintonge. My master of hunt Kilborn brings word of beast spawn in my realm. I'm hearing much talk from Saintonge. It is a set of foul boar is terrorizing the local villages. Ooh, okay. Maybe we'll go and check that out. One thing I have been considering is starting a legend, and this Gothic Kings legend here, this legitimizing legend, the Goths brought about the destruction of Rome and founded our kingdom. We are their heirs, the kings and queens of the Goths. Considering we control Gotland, which is, related to the ancient tribe of the Goths as well. And, our people were in Iberia where the Visigoths were. This actually, I think, makes the most sense, especially because if you take a look here, you'll see that once this legend is complete, you will get a claim on every existing title inside the de jure Empire of Hispania. And indeed, I think that makes, considering the Scalendils are, based in here, and, this in Iberia has been a big part of our people's legend, and, the connection to the Goths is actually very strong in our family. I think that this makes a lot of sense for us to do, and we've got the money to be able to afford to do this legend. So this is absolutely something that I do want to do. Now we are going to dedicate this legend, I believe to our father here, who was a great man and was a possibly one of the greatest Vikings to ever live. And I think that it should be said that we will honor his memory. King Yorleif of Eystrasaltsriki was born to a great Gothic lineage to rule the Empire of Hispania as his forebears would have. Upon hearing vague rumors that plagued the land, he set his heart to accomplish this endeavor. Yeah, I mean, most of this usually doesn't make much sense, and I think just the idea that we are the heirs to this Gothic lineage, I think is more of what this legend can be said to be about. We are being invited to a hunt. I don't know. Let's see. Anything that we want to do here? We could probably do our own hunt here. I mean, yeah, let's do we want to do that? Yeah, we could do a hunt, I suppose. Oh, nice. Yeah, let's do it over here. We haven't actually done. Oh, we're actually low on money though. All right. We'll wait a little bit here. But yeah, what's the situation? I mean, Norway, that's an interesting situation. Neighboring ruler lost war. King Halfdan lost against Chiefess Bjorg in the Liberty War. Well, man, the fact that he is oh man, look at this. There's a Polish uprising. There's a Satru, a Norwegian, a Satru uprising. Yeah, okay. And there is also a populist Sami Uko Nusko uprising. So he converted to Catholicism, but man, he's just, the rebellions are just completely taking over his realm here. We are still technically his heir. And I mean, we could take his titles, but I don't know if we want to get into a war so soon after the wars that we were just in. But I will let time just continue to roll while we look at some other things here. Like King Stein the Young has actually done a pretty good job of ruling Galicia here. He's still in a Satru, still Galician. He's a pretty strong king. He might be a little bit lazy, but he is temperate and brave. He's a poet as well, which is pretty cool. This is the bastard son of King Onander and the great grandson, I suppose, of Rollo the Walker, which is pretty cool. So yeah, he's still ruling here. He's got that little bit of a Satru there in his lands. Castali is still ruled by Queen Bergthora, which is obviously a member of House Scalendil here. Her heir is Countess Edla the Fair of Monterey. Now, Countess Edla is an Asatru follower, so Castali, the kingdom that was formed, this new Scalendil kingdom, it's pretty cool that the Scalendils, this granddaughter of Ivar, became queen of Castali, and we didn't have anything to do with that. That was all just the AI, and I think that is pretty cool to see. One actually other interesting thing is that won't be the only Scalendil or Ivar related ruler. Actually, we might see it here. Indeed, we do. Actually, as King Anselm's died of stress at age 53. And take a look at this character. You might notice that he has club-footed. I saw this character before and I was like, oh, club-footed. That's kind of funny. I wonder if he's related to Ivar. Look who his grandfather is. His grandfather is Geir Lucidio's son, the son of Mayor Lucidio, the one who was executed by King Ingolfur Haraldar's son, the one who the execution that started the rivalry between House Ingling and House Scalendil. So that the current king of Andalusia, this massive realm of Andalusia here, is in fact a great great grandson of Ivar the Far Walker. Isn't that just cool? Like the way that has worked out is just so interesting. I believe, yeah, and then the new king of Valencia is also related to that. So yeah, very very cool. Little kind of turn of events, or very interesting thing there. It's crazy. Look how they took all of the Maghreb here. This is the Maghreb, right? I believe so. In any case, it is, yeah, the Maghreb. They managed to convert all of it to Catholicism, which is crazy to me that they converted it that fast. So yeah, that's a pretty interesting turn of events there that we see with Andalusia here. Also, they must have done another crusade here to take these lands as well, because King Louis of Badajoz is also a Crusader king. So there must have been another Catholic crusade, probably the third Catholic crusade, to take this land as well. So interestingly enough, they're not kicking the Norse out of here, but they were trying to take southern Iberia. So the Reconquista did happen. There are, in fact, no longer any Muslim rulers here in southern Spain. And in fact, they took all of the Maghreb as well. So that's an interesting turn of events there as well. I did see an interesting thing. I wonder if he still rules here. Yeah, look at this. On the island of Enis Mon is Adabeg Kilik or Kilich the Chaste. Yeah, some Orthodox Ozguz guy took the island here which to me is just very, very interesting. We did get a Norse ruler here taking Leinster as well. So we've got Petty King Ragnar. Fellow servants of the Allfather, as our order of the Joms Vikings grow, we need more land from which to organize our defense of the Asatru faith. The city of Lectur is perfectly suited to our purpose, and we wish to lease it into service for our cause. Your request is granted for Odin. Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll continue to sponsor the Joms Vikings. That will be useful to us. Reckless relations. I can tell there's something wrong with my wife Grilla as soon as we're in bed together. She is clearly distracted, and I clasp her hand gently and ask what the matter is. It's a money matter, she sighs, running her hand over her head. I have some family who are short on luck, and they're close to losing their home. I used to spend time there as a child. Is there anything we can do? I'm sure they could pay us back. They just need to get back on their feet. Family of Ulfing here. Leave it to me. I mean, sure, why not? We have money, and our wife is actually our soulmate, so you can't say no to your soulmate. Yeah, I'm curious if Norway's just gonna lose a bunch of these wars here. Presumably so. Looks like the Empire is losing their war against the English to try to take their lands back. Jarl Snorri has been imprisoned by Chieftain Olafur. Interesting. Okay. Byzantines are pretty strong. I mean, they're actually very strong here. Ragnar the Brute has died. Okay. Alliance formed Jarl Freyreker. Oh, and he's not looking too great either. It seems like consumption seems to be doing them in over there. Jarl Snorri the Strange of Västergotland. Interesting. Looks like Iceland has been consolidated over there. You are always here for me, and I hope you know that I'm grateful. My son Veminder approaches me. Sure. We'll get a hook on our son here. We do have a truce, obviously, with the Holy Romans, so we can't attack them to expand our lands here just yet. And, we did suffer, it was a very difficult thing to muster all of those troops for this war. And so the fact that we managed to pull off what we did, leading another army that size, again, would take a few years at least to be able to muster that up. Our spy master is Count Njord is scheming against my wet nurse. Let the traitor be known to all? Sure. So tell me, my lord, my spy master Odd's voice snaps me back out of my thoughts, and I find him waving his hand with a quill, spilling ink over the floor. What about that time King Ivar of the Eastern Salt Kingdom defeated Emperor Omri of the Holy Roman Empire at the legendary Battle of Arnheim? That is surely worth adding to the legend. Ooh, that was a great occasion. Yes, let's change a chapter in the Gothic Kings. Everyone remembers the great deed. Yes, I mean, that was that battle that we fought. Where was that? Probably Arnheim? Somewhere around this region, right? In any case, that was a pretty epic battle. Ooh, Saemund died. Saemund the Shield, which means his son Duke Gorm inherits, and will hopefully rule those lands in the name of our family as well. He is still, he probably learned from his father to be loyal to us. Neighboring ruler has lost the war. King Styrbjorn lost a war there, like his first steps. Yeah, I mean, it's good to see our children growing up well. The thing you have to think of too is like, as we... I'm going to switch over to Majesty focus here, just because, It's I think it's fitting. Our warring time is kind of done in some ways. You know, part of the reason we would want to take these lands is because, much like the Norse did when they were taking England, these aren't vast lands for, farming. In fact, I do recall reading something about how the people of Gotland, at some point, there's like a story about how they kicked out 1 in 3 of all of their people. So every third person was kicked out off the island because there simply wasn't enough space on the island to support all those people, and then a third of them had to go, elsewhere. And so, we have to understand that this is not a land, especially like, in Norway and things like that. It's not a vast land that is amazing for farming and things like that. And so, we have this all these Norse people who want land, good land for farming, and there's plenty of such land to be found here in Aquitaine. Maybe not as much in Frisia, but still certainly some to be found here in Frisia as well. And so we would have all of these Norse settlers coming into these lands and settling down in this region because, the Vikings may have came for loot, but the ones who landed and formed kingdoms were doing so because they were richer lands than the ones they came from. So that's something that I think we have to keep in mind for like why this conquest happened. As king, I give permission to the youth soon to perform rites of passage. Some make bold promises, oaths few Gutnish could keep. Others, like my courtier Bernard. So I didn't mention this, but we actually, the king of Brittany, in order to secure his own safety, offered us one of his nieces to be married to our son, Ivar, Carl here. So his niece is to be wed to her. And he gave us this kid here, Bernard, to essentially be a hostage in our realm. This is his nephew. And so, the king of Brittany understands that, he can arrange his own peace with King Ivar that is separate from anything that the Holy Roman Empire has to do with. Anyways, Bernard seems to be interested in our Norse ways. Today, the chosen trial is the same I myself once undertook. Bernard's skill at arms is to be his worth, but I notice he bears no sword. The named opponent is like a mountain, he moans. How am I supposed to win except by some dirty trick? My retelling of my right will inspire him. He must suffer his own mistakes. I'll retell him my right here. And our tale is wonderfully inspiring. Good for you, kid. So he wants to actually participate in a Norse tool. That's actually that's kind of cool. Maybe we'll teach this kid the Norse ways. Can we get one of our guys to educate him? He's a learning character, but what about somebody like Sigtrygger, the son of Duke Frosty here? Yeah, sure, why not? And maybe you can convert his faith, and we'll see, convert his culture as well. Maybe he'll become a good Gutar. He seems interested in the ways of our people, certainly. So yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating kind of worldly situation here that is developing. And, as we take a look at the greater world here, we can see, there's a lot going on. We've got a strong Nubia down here. Our daughter has come of age. We've got this Doria Confederation here with the Mongols. Byzantines are strong. We've got these two versions of Hungary, the Mogirs and the Hungarians. So we've got the Catholic Hungarians and we've got the Taltoist Hungarians, or the Taltoist Mogir here. And so that's actually a really interesting kind of dynamic. The two Hungaries, essentially, the Mogirs who held to the old ways and the ones who have converted to Catholicism. And what's really cool is that their capitals are literally like pretty much side by side here. So that's actually super cool to see there. We've got this Holy Roman Empire that's strong but weakened. Norway, which is converted, but obviously facing some troubles. Ireland as a kingdom. England is looking strong. All these cool things going on here down in Iberia. This is a very fascinating world. And what I want to consider and what I pose to you down in the comments, like I said, this may be the end of our current tale. We won't be continuing on the next season as Ivar, but we will be continuing in this world. What I am going to do is I am going to let this world play out for 100 years, or, about 76 years, till the year 1066. And I'm going to put very, very minimal impact on the world during that time. I'm just going to see what happens as the time rolls on. Maybe I'll do a time lapse. Maybe I'll show you guys, or for those of you who are channel members, either on Patreon or on YouTube, I might do a time lapse so that you guys can kind of see what happens over that 100 years. But I'm gonna let that time. I'm gonna let that time pass, and then our next series is going to take place with perhaps not a direct descendant of Ivar, King Ivar the Elder here, but we will certainly be playing a descendant of Jarl Ivar. If we take a look at the Scallendale dynasty, there's 58 members here. There's already 3 different houses. So we're going to come back in like 2 or 3 generations from now. After presumably Ivar he's absolutely going to be dead 76 years from now. Probably even his sons might be dead 76 years from now. So we're going to be taking place, 2 or 3 generations from now and seeing what the world has to offer. But what I want you to do down in the comments is leave your predictions and possibly some suggestions for what you think the world might look like in the year 1066 based on this situation we find ourselves. You can take a look at the cultures here. You can see we've got the Galician and the Castilian cultures spreading here, the Basques and the Catalans, the French. We've got the Gutar over here. Is there going to become a Gutar/Norse Occitanian hybrid in the kingdom of Aquitaine? Who's to say? There's all these interesting things. What's the culture or what's the religion map going to look like after all this time? There's a lot of interesting and fascinating questions, and I want to have a little bit of a mystery because I want you guys to wonder what the world's going to look like in the year 1066, and then we will all find out together in the next episode, in the next series that we play in this world. But this is where I'm going to be leaving you. It may seem like an anticlimactic end, but in a lot of ways, the story that began all those many years ago with Ivar Twistfoot and continued to Vemender Ravenkiller, and then to Yorleif the Fearless, and now to King Ivar the Elder. It has been a story of many ups and downs, but I think that it is a story that is not quite yet done. And so we will see how it plays out in the future. But until then, Wanderers, thank you so much for taking this journey with me. I know that Ivar Twistfoot would be proud of the lineage, if not the way that they went about making it. But we shall see what the descendants of Ivar Twistfoot look like in the year 1066. And that will be coming up, well, perhaps in the not too far future. Until then, Wanderers, thank you so much for watching. I have been Stray. You have all been wonderful. And I will see you next time.